Well, welcome, guys. I am Tim. I'm your English teacher, and I just want to say warm welcome to you. Live in Monroe, actually towards Duval, but it's in Monroe, and have five kids. I've taught at Monroe for a long time, and I want to jump right in and just get you interested in Frankenstein. In fact, let me just hold this up. I bet you can see it, okay? This is the story we're going to be reading as a classic novel, but we're going to be reading in this graphic art or graphic novel format. Okay, so let me just introduce it with a couple of quick comments, and then we're going to just jump right in and start reading, and you'll be able to see. Um, First of all, have you ever imagined an era where people could try to bring people back from the dead? I mean, we don't even talk about that right now, maybe in movies and things, but believe it or not, there was a time in the early 1800s and late 1700s where there were actually scientists experimenting with trying to bring people back from the dead. And one of them, who's an Italian scientist named Galvani, this might seem kind of crazy to you, but he actually found they had a prisoner that they hung, in his city was hung, and he asked, "Hey, can I have the body?" Okay, this is true, a true story. And I just want to read something real quick to you, and just give you the gruesome details because they make it more interesting. But it says that um, Galvani, for instance, he applied electrical hooks to the corpse of a criminal who had been executed by hanging. Okay, and after the first experiment, Galvani reported excitedly that this is quote, this is him talking. The corpse's jaw began to quiver, and the adjoining muscles were horribly contorted, and the left eye actually opened. So he applies electricity, these hooks to this dead body that's been hung, and the left eye opens. Okay, so here's kind of if I take off my glasses, it's kind of like opening and looking at him. Okay. Now, in the end, his research proved fruitless, but anyway, it became kind of at the time, we're talking about the early 1800s, okay, it became like the rumor and the news story and the imagination of thousands of people around the world. This became, wow, somebody put electricity in a body and it came back to life. Well, that leads us to this story here, okay, Frankenstein, that we're going to read together. And another little piece of information, it was written by a very young girl. She's like 17 years old when she wrote this story. And what happened was, everything about her life is scandalous, okay? Scandalous affairs and people, all these people dying. But what happened was, when she was 15, this guy named Percy Shelley, who was a flamboyant, very nice looking guy, he came and saw to travel to see her father, who was a poet and writer and an intellectual. And while he was there visiting her father, Mary, 15 years old, she got a major crush on Piercy, okay? Good looking guy. And they kind of like started talking privately, probably went on walks and stuff. And eventually this led to by the time she was 17, she takes a trip to go to France to spend time with this guy who had been married. Some rumors say, could have been married at the time, but she's off to have this relationship with Piercy, okay? Well, anyway, in 1816 it was a very strange summer because a volcano had erupted in Indonesia, and what happened was it created really climatic and volatile and stormy weather in the summer, where it would go from being a summer day, nice and warm and hot, and people are like going to the beach and the lake or whatever, and all of a sudden, within just a couple of hours, it would get freezing cold. It'd be pouring down rain and hail and lightning and stuff. And in 1860, this really happened. It was like the summer that wasn't, okay, because of all the cloud, the ash, it made it dark and stuff. Well, right at the time where Mary goes to kind of have this affair with Piercy and be with him in this resort, this wonderful chateau in Switzerland. She goes, and when she's with him, the weather got really, really bad. So finally they had to haul up at the night. They wanted to go out on a lake and a boat and this, that. And they had to they couldn't think of what to do with their time, so they decided, let's have a competition. So Lord Byron, the guy that they're staying with in this chateau, this really expensive home, he challenges Piercy and Mary, the 17-year-old. Yeah, let's have a writing contest, basically. They've been reading, these German folk tales of terror and horror and stuff, stories. Let's have a contest. And so let's take them a day or so and just write stories, and then we'll read them over the firelight at night and see what's the scariest story. Got it? Well, Lord Byron, he starts writing something that was kind of like a Dracula type story, okay, and Piercy starts writing poetry and various, things, and he starts writing something. Mary can't think of anything. For the first day or so, she just can't think of anything to write. But then she has a dream. And in her dream, she imagines this creature that looks like this guy, this pale-faced, bent over this dead body, and it's coming to life, okay? So that's kind of like a little set of the story. We're going to read it, just so you want to pay close attention, because I'm going to ask you to write about it as we go through it. We're going to learn some things about literature. We'll work on your paragraph writing and pulling out specific details and your ability to do that. So with that as an introduction, longer than I want it to be, I'm going to switch my camera here, and I'm going to start reading this to you. So, where did I go here? Here it is. All right. So now this starts the story, and you should be able to see this and hopefully read along with me. Now, just to let you know, the story kind of starts off where the sea captain, Captain Walton, he's trying to go to the North Pole, and they spot this weird, strange creature going on a sled, and he's writing these letters to his sister. But and it's going to be what's called a frame story, where this begins the story, but then he picks up this guy who's about to starve to death and freeze to death as they're going to the North Pole on the ship, and he starts telling the story, and that guy he picks up is Victor Frankenstein, okay? All right, so with that as my wonderful introduction, all right? So I told you that there's letters, okay? This Captain Walton's writing letters to his sister about this guy he picked up, okay? All right, from letters of Robert Walton. Letter 1, December 11th. My sister, my dear sister, I am already far north of London. I feel a cold northern breeze play upon my cheeks, which braces my nerves and fills me with delight. This breeze, which has traveled from the regions towards which I am advancing, gives me a foretaste of those icy climes. I try in vain to be persuaded that the pole, so he's going to be trying to be the first human being to get to the North Pole. He's very excited. He wants to be famous, okay? The pole is the seat of frost and desolation. So that means it's cold and desolate and lonely. There, Margaret, the sun is forever visible. There, we may be wafted to the land surpassing in wonders and in beauty, every region hitherto discovered on the habitable globe. So he's writing this letter to his sister. So I'm going to switch here, okay, and jump into this. This expedition has been the favorite dream of my early years. I have read with ardor, which means interest, the accounts of the various voyages made in the prospect of arriving at the North Pacific Ocean. Do I deserve to accomplish some great purpose? My life might have been passed in ease and luxury, but I preferred glory to every enticement well placed on my path. I am about to proceed on a long and difficult voyage, the emergencies of which will demand all of my fortitude. Okay, so he's basically telling his sister, hey, I'm about to go on this very difficult voyage, but you know what? Rather than being wealthy, I'd rather be famous, okay? I'd rather be famous and be the first human to make the North Passage to the North Pole, all right? All right, so letter 2 on March 28th here. I'm just going to point to where we're at right here on the screen here, right here, okay? How slowly the time passes here, encompassed as I am by frost and snow. I have no friend, Margaret. When I am glowing with the enthusiasm of success, there will be none to participate in my joy. If I am assailed by disappointment, no one to sustain me in dejection. I cannot describe to you my sensations on the near prospect of my undertaking. So he's basically saying, I can't tell you how excited I am. Okay. All right. So I'm going to bring this up to here. Letter 3, July 7th. We have already reached a very high latitude. Be assured that I will not rashly encounter danger, which means, hey, don't worry. I'm taking this seriously. I'm being careful. Okay. Letter 4, August 5th. No, I should tell you that in the real full novel of Frankenstein, you should be aware that it's much longer, and these letters might be a couple of pages. Okay. So what they've done in this really well done graphic novel is they have condensed it so it's shorter, but the full story is still there. And this was done by, they're done by professors, college professors who make these, write these, and help work with artists. Okay, so it's pretty cool. All right, letter number 4, August 5th. Last Monday, ice closed in the ship on all sides. Our situation was somewhat dangerous. As we were compassed round and by very thick fog, we accordingly lay to, hoping that some change would take place in the atmosphere and weather. So they basically get stuck in the ice, okay? About 2 o'clock, the mist cleared away, and we beheld vast and irregular plains of ice, which seemed to have no end. Some of my comrades groaned, and my own mind began to groan. Watchful and anxious thoughts, when a strange sight suddenly attracted our attention and diverted our solicitude from our own situations. We perceived, okay, so I'm going to move this up here. There we go. All the way up so you can see this, okay. We perceived at the distance of a half mile a being from the creature, okay, which had the shape of a man, but apparently of gigantic stature. Shut in, however, by ice, it was impossible for us to follow his track. So they see this guy, okay, going along. It would be this guy right here. He's whipping his, but he's huge, okay, he's very large. Okay. All right. So in the morning, I found all of the sailors busy on the one side of the vessel, apparently talking to someone in the sea. It was, in fact, a sledge which had drifted towards us in the night on a large fragment of ice. There was a human being whom the sailors were persuading to enter the vessel. He was not, as the other travelers seemed to be, a savage, but an European. So you see kind of this, you know, this European superiority kind of creeping into this piece of literature here, okay? So I just wanted to kind of call that out and point to it. But this is written by Mary Shelley in the 1800s. So just being aware of history here. Here is our captain, and he will not allow you to perish on the open sea. Before I come aboard, will you have the kindness to inform me whether you are bound, which basically says, before I come on your ship, will you tell me where you're going? Okay. We are on a voyage of discovery towards the northern pole. Upon hearing this, he appeared satisfied and consented to come on aboard. His limbs were nearly frozen and his body dreadfully emaciated. It's that word emaciated right there. If I just kind of point at it with my pencil here. The word emaciated, it means like really, really skinny, like starving to death. You know, an emaciated cow would look like it. You can see its ribs, okay? Emaciated by fatigue and suffering. I never saw a man so wretched. Wretched means miserable, okay? A condition. We restored him to animation, and by slow degrees, he recovered. 2 days passed before he was able to speak. So it took 2 days before this guy, who is Victor Frankenstein, can actually speak. So they feed him and they thaw him out and they, you know, okay. All right. Why did you come far upon the ice in so strange a vehicle, to seek one who fled from me. I fancy we have seen him. We saw some dogs drawing a sledge with a man in it across the ice. So, and then so we're going to pull it up here. And he says, he's thinking, or by the way, I'll give you a little tip about graphic novels here, just so you'll know here. The bubbles that are around like this, the speech bubbles, that's somebody speaking, okay? Usually if it's kind of like jagged like this, where it says demon, or it'll be kind of lumpy, just like a cloud, that's someone thinking out loud, you know, that would be like their thoughts usually, okay? And then when it's in a square box like this, it's usually what's called narration. It's just the narration of what's happening in the story, just telling. So round bubbles, someone speaking. Cloudy bubbles look like a cloud, someone thinking, and then you got narration, okay? All right, so he thinks to himself, this is Victor Frankenstein, he's saying, the demon. Do you think that breaking up of the ice has destroyed the other sledge? The ice did not break until near midnight. He might have arrived at the place of safety before that time. I have doubtless excited your curiosity. You are too considerate to make inquiries, and yet you rescued me. You have restored me to life. A new spirit of life animated the stranger. He must have been a noble creature in his better days. So something about this demon, this creature, if I kind of flip in his mind, this is what he's thinking about. Okay, in his mind, he's thinking about the beast, the wretch, he calls it. But that's what gets him all excited. And so the captain's thinking, what's gotten this guy so excited? All right, we're going to continue. So, August 19th, okay. Yesterday, the stranger said to me, you may easily perceive, Captain Walton, that I have suffered great misfortunes. You seek for knowledge, as I once did. And I hope that may not be a serpent to sting you. A serpent is an allusion to like Satan in the Garden of Eden. It was a serpent, a snake, okay? And I hope that may not be a serpent to sting you, as mine has been. Yet you may deduce an apt moral from my tale, which basically means, hey, you might learn a lesson from my story. So since you're seeking glory in the North Pole, maybe I better tell you my story. Prepare to hear of occurrences which are usually deemed marvelous. My fate is nearly fulfilled. Nothing can alter my destiny. Listen to my history, and you will perceive how irrevocably it is determined. Irrevocably means it can't be reversed, okay? My fate, my destiny is just determined. It can't be changed, all right? So then it's, then in the book, it looks like this, okay? It says volume 1, chapter 1, and then you've got this square box, which means narration happening. So I want to show you something kind of cool here, just to kind of give you some insight into, in fact, I'll probably have a quiz question about this, okay? If you look on my piece of paper here, I'm going to draw a square, all right? All right, perfect, it's showing up, you can see it. Now, watch this. This is what's called a frame story, okay? And a frame story means you've got your original frame, okay? If I draw this like this, okay? Okay, it's not perfect, but look at here. So your original frame is Captain Walton. This is the captain, and he is at sea, and he's writing letters to his companions. Now, he's writing these letters, to his sister. That's the first frame that we were in. Okay, that is the first frame. Just un momento. Then the second frame, let me do this. Let me stop this. Nope, it went away. Okay, they were calling me. I just wanted to make sure I was trying to get to the phone, but I'm going to skip that. All right, so now the second frame starts, and this second frame is going to be Victor. We'll say Victor. Okay, Victor F. Frankenstein. He's going to tell his story. Okay. And so, but here's the kind of cool thing about a frame story is that you've got a story, you're going to have a story within a story within a story within a story. Mary, she was 17 at the time, she got a little bit carried away. But just know in literature, okay, when we're studying literature here, that sometimes they'll do this thing called a frame story, where someone starts narrating and then they turn it over to somebody else who then tells their story. And that's kind of what's happening as we slide right into this right here. Volume 1, okay? And it says, I, Victor Frankenstein, am by birth a Genevanese, which means from Geneva, Switzerland. And my family is one of the most distinguished of that republic. My father filled several public state situations with honor and reputation. There was a considerable difference between the ages of my parents, but this circumstance seemed to unite them only closer in bonds of devoted affection. After their marriage, my parents sought a pleasant climate of Italy. Now, it's no surprise here that right here that she puts in, um, his parents are, dad's a lot older than mom. Okay, so he married this much younger woman. Why would Mary Shelley, who's 17 and having an affair at the time with a guy that's, maybe, I don't know, significantly older than her, it happens to creep into her story, right? A little biography there. From Italy, they visited Germany and Naples. I was born at Naples, and as an infant accompanied them on their rambles. So rambles is another name for adventures, okay? Journeys, okay? All right, let me see if I can get this to focus. There we go. I remained for several years their only child. I was their only plaything and their idol, and something better than their child, the innocent and helpless creature bestowed on them by heaven. When I was about 5 years old, my mother found a peasant and his wife with 5 hungry babies. Among these, there was one which attracted my mother far above all the rest. She was the orphan daughter of a nobleman, and with my father's permission, my mother prevailed on her rustic guardians to yield their charge to her. Elizabeth Lavenza became the inmate of my parents' house, my more than sister. So can I explain this a little bit? So they came across this, they're kind of, people that have money and stuff, and they came across this very poor family that had 5 children. And that very poor family happened to have adopted this little girl who came from a nobleman. So somebody died, the little girl's parents died, and so this peasant family who's very poor adopts him. Well, Victor Frankenstein's parents meet them. Victor's mom kind of falls in love with the little girl and convinces the couple, hey, we'd love to take on another child. And this peasant couple agrees to it, okay? And so there you go. The beautiful and adored companion of all my occupations and my pleasures. All right, volume 1, chapter 2. We were brought up together. There was not quite a year difference in our ages. On the birth of a second son, my parents gave up entirely their wandering life and fixed themselves in their native country. We possessed a house in Geneva. There I united myself in the bonds of the closest friendship to Henry Clairville. He was deeply read in books of chivalry and romance, so he began to write many a tale. So he meets this friend, Henry. They become buddies here, and they're practicing sword fighting. And Henry's the kind of guy that likes to read about heroes who have sword fighting and chivalry and knights in shining armor and those kinds of tales that have romance in them and stuff, okay? And so, and he's just, he's kind of like outgoing, he's funny, he's light and cheerful. All right. The busy stage of life, the virtues of heroes, and the actions of men were his theme. All right. So jump over, let it focus. Elizabeth was the living spirit of love to soften and attract Clairville. might not have been so full of kindness and tenderness had she not unfolded to him the real loveliness of benevolence, which basically means Elizabeth's very sweet. She really likes clerical stories and stuff. Natural philosophy is the genius that has regulated my fate. I procured the whole works of Agrippa and Paracelsus, Paracelsus and Albertus Magnus. So just you know, okay, he starts reading. You remember I opened this thing telling you that there was this Italian scientist named Galvani who came up with this idea, Galvani, that came up with this idea of electrocuting dead bodies. These people that Victor is reading about, they're scientists and they're like interested in bringing things like dead back from life back from the dead, and they kind of are into like mysterious things. That was part of history, was, you know, alchemy, this kind of spiritual chemical thing mixed together and supernatural desires to do things. Okay, I read and studied the wild fancies of these writers with delight. Here were men who had penetrated the secrets of nature. I became their disciple. Wealth was an inferior object, just like Captain Walton, by the way, going back to that first frame. But what glory would attend the discovery if I could banish disease from the human frame and render man invulnerable to any but a violent death? Okay. When I was 15, we witnessed a most violent and terrible thunderstorm. It advanced from behind the mountains of Jura. Now, I'm going to introduce a concept here. It's this kind of a, you know, there we go, to this picture. But I want to introduce a concept. In fact, if I flip right here, I want you guys to learn this and see this real fast, okay? You probably by now had an English teacher mention this word for you, okay? Foreshadowing. Okay, and in many pieces of literature, they will take and use weather as a foreshadowing. If you know what's happening with weather, if it gets really stormy and dark and gloomy, guess what's probably going to happen in the story, right? It's going to point to the events in a story. And in this story, you know, this young Mary Shelley, she definitely follows that pattern. So you'll see this when it gets springtime and it's beautiful out and they're outside and their mood increases, things are really cheerful. But when you see, and I want you to watch for this, when you see the weather get lightning and stormy, guess what? Bad things are about to happen, okay? Now, not so much in this first scene, but it's somewhat, okay? All right. The thunder burst at once with frightful loudness from various quarters of the heavens. Okay. I beheld a stream of fire issue from an old and beautiful oak. So lightning hits this oak tree. And as soon as the dazzling light vanished the oak and disappeared, and nothing remained but a blasted stump. So the stump remains. It's just destroyed by the power of lightning. Okay. The next morning, we found the tree shattered in a singular manner. It was not splintered by the shock, but entirely reduced to the thin ribbons of wood. Before this, I was not unacquainted with the more obvious laws of electricity. So obviously electricity is extremely powerful. I at once gave up my former occupations. I betook myself to the mathematics and then the branches of study appertaining to that science. But it was ineffectual destiny. It was ineffectual destiny was too potent, which means my destiny was just too powerful. And her mutable laws had decreed my utter and terrible destruction. So basically he's saying, I'm becoming obsessed and doomed with my obsession. It's going to destroy me. It's basically a hint at this, okay? All right, volume 1, chapter 3. It says, when I was 17, my parents resolved that I should become a student at the University of Ingolstadt when misfortune occurred. Elizabeth caught the scarlet fever, and my mother attended her sick bed. Elizabeth was saved, but my mother sickened. So my children, my firmest hopes of future happiness were placed on the prospect of your union. Elizabeth, my love, you must supply my place to my younger children. Alas, I regret that I am taken from you. I will endeavor to resign myself cheerfully to death. So just gonna let you know what's happening here. Um, and it says, and I will hope to indulge a hope of meeting you in another world. So their mom's dying, and she kind of sees the adopted Elizabeth and Victor together there, and she kind of basically says, this prospect, I kind of hope to see you two, get together. And, so she has these dying wishes, all right? All right. She died calmly, and her countenance, that's the look on her face, is a countenance, expressed affection, even in death. My mother was dead. But we had still duties which we ought to perform. Elizabeth veiled her grief and strove to act the comforter to us all. The day of my departure from Ingolstadt had at length arrived. Clerval had endeavored to persuade his father to permit him to join me, but in vain. Write often, Victor. I love my brothers, Elizabeth and Clerval, but I ardently, which means strongly, desired the acquisition of knowledge. So it's saying goodbye to them. Last 2 pages of this video here. Okay. My journey to Ingolstadt was long and fatiguing. At length, the high white steeple of the town met my eyes. The next morning, I delivered my letters of introduction. So when you went to a city, you would have, if you were a nobleman, you would have letters, especially to the college, which would basically be like your entrance papers for college. Chance, or rather, the angel of destruction led me first to, okay, and I'm going to, Monsieur Kemp, professor of natural philosophy. He was an uncouth man. Uncouth means like burps a lot and passes gas, or it can mean that, not really well trained, or it could just mean a person that's like really loud and kind of mean and not very socially polite, okay? So he was an uncouth man, but deeply imbued, which means full of new knowledge in the secrets of his science. Have you really spent your time studying such nonsense? Yes. Every minute, every instant that you have wasted on those books is utterly and entirely lost. I little expected in the enlightened and scientific age to find a disciple of Magnus and Paracelsus. My dear sir, you must begin your studies entirely anew. I went into the lecturing room of Monsieur Waldman. This professor was very unlike his colleague. The colleague is a fellow professor. The ancient teachers of this science promised possibilities and performed nothing. The modern masters promise very little. They know that the elixir of life and secret of life is a chimera, which means like a fantasy. It like floats away just before you can get to it. But these philosophers penetrate into the recesses of nature and have discovered how the blood circulates and the nature of the air we breathe, okay? So I'm going to stop my video right there, and that's kind of the first section, kind of like we'll call that the first chapter, and we'll be back with the next one shortly. Let me see if I can